Hindi is any good. अभी तक बेसिकली इन जो मेन पॉइंट गए हैं वो एक तो 3% रिजर्वेशन जो लॉ में है, उन्होंने कहा है कि वो एक अफर्मेटिव मतलब एक कानून की तरफ से पॉजिटिव एक्शन है, और हमारे पास हिंदुस्तान का संविधान है और सब मेंटल हेल्थ एक्ट है, नेशनल ट्रस्ट एक्ट है, और डिसेबिलिटी वाला लॉ है, और इन सब के और उसके साथ साथ वो यूएन का कन्वेंशन है, और इन सब के साथ कुछ अच्छे जजेस भी हैं, जैसे फिलहाल वक्त जस्टिस सीकरी जो हैं, जो दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट के चीफ जस्टिस हैं, जो इन कॉजेस पे, ह्यूमन राइट्स के कॉजेस पे बहुत अच्छे जजमेंट्स देते हैं। और एक रेलवे का केस ने साइड किया जिसमें जस्टिस सीकरी ने कहा कि जगमोहन जी देख नहीं सकते, मगर हमारी जो इंडियन रेलवे है उसको दृष्टि का प्रॉब्लम है, उसका दृष्टिकोण खराब है। तो जजेस का व्यू पॉइंट बहुत अच्छा है, जो हमारे लिए एक बहुत अच्छी बात है।
Look to the US, America is the country which we all look towards in terms of our social and economic path going forward. I thought I'd just compare briefly the disability law in India versus the US. One is that in India we provide reservation and quotas, 3% in education, 3% in employment, although that does not apply to the private sector. In the US, there are no quotas. I think that for disability, whether it is a developed country or a developing country, quotas are very important. There is a lot of debate about quotas amongst other disadvantaged groups, saying they've already reaped the benefits and it's time to stop reservation. But I certainly think not so for persons with disabilities, because without the benefit of education, the prospects of employment, whether in the private or public sector, are very, very limited. And even when it comes to employment, public sector employment is important, and not only that, it can also enable private sector employment. When some years back, the telecommunications industry started in India and was able to leap forward so fast because most of the employees that joined the private sector companies came from the public sector with expertise in telecommunications. And so I was talking to Mr. Reddy in the tea break, and he was talking about his son who has a cleft palate problem, and the son would like to join the private sector, but Mr. Reddy would like him to join the public sector civil services. Well, I feel there's a connection there, because if you have reservation in the civil services, after some 10 years of service and experience, you could very well qualify for the private sector with your experience and understanding of how the government works. So public sector quotas can also help in private sector employment down the road. But when it comes to the anti-discrimination provisions, the US American with Disabilities Act is very strong. There are blanket provisions in the American with Disabilities Act for non-discrimination against persons with disabilities, both in the public and private sector. And these are very broad definitions, where it may cover employment, it may cover access to public facilities, it may cover education. But either in the public or private sector, discrimination in the US is prohibited. And in practice, the courts in the US link the concept of reasonable accommodation to the idea of non-discrimination. So, for example, if an employee acquires a disability in service and is terminated without the employer, be it a private employer, considering reasonable accommodation and considering alternative jobs, etc., that can allow the person to be functional, then the courts have said that no, you must consider reasonable accommodation first. And unless you prove to us that it